welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake Lamore, and today we have the distinct honor of diving headfirst into the world of spine-tingling horror with a talented local author who thrills readers with his dark and haunting narratives. Now, his journey into the realm of storytelling is a tale in itself, with roots dating back into the early 1990s. He began his creative endeavors in screenwriting before transitioning to fiction and comic writing in the early 2000s. Now, his literary repertoire spans the realms of horror, science fiction, and fantasy, earning him a multitude of credits in both online and print magazines, as well as several novellas and novels such as Nightcry and The Golden Door. I'm pleased to welcome Gregory Thompson to Kankakee Podcast. Welcome.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here, and that's a good memory right there from our conversation.
Well, and I did do some research when we first met. So, yeah, I mean, we could start with that. You and I have known each other a short period of time.
Right.
We met at the Strawberry Jazz Festival just this last June at Northfield Square Mall. You were there selling your books. And I was very intrigued by the covers of those books, especially The Golden Door. And that's one that I ended up buying. I bought The Golden Door. I think it was Grandmother.
Yeah, I think
Grandmother, yeah. And then Nightcry, I think. I still haven't read Grandmother or Nightcry, but I have read The Golden Door. But the cover art for some of these books was very captivating. So I was very intrigued, even though I'm not a an avid horror fan. I was just very intrigued by it. So yeah, we struck up conversation, and I was just very fascinated from the beginning. So,
well, yeah, thank you. The covers, I'm a big cover guy myself when I just shop for books. So I got to have a halfway decent cover to even appreciate, what I wrote. Sometimes the artists do better than what I wrote.
So, I mean, okay, with that being said, have you ever bought a book just from its cover?
Yeah.
And not even knowing what it's about? You just see the front cover, you're like, oh, I gotta have this.
Yeah, that's sometimes how I discover like authors I've never read before. Like I'll just be scrolling through the bookstore or even on the Kindle, even audiobooks. I'll see a great cover. I'm like, well, this looks like a good science fiction or a good horror. I'm like, I don't even read a description. I'll just get it and go from there.
Now, how many times does it end up being good? Like, say, good cover, good book. Like,
maybe half.
Yeah.
Like I try to give a book a good chance. Like even if I'm not fond of the beginning or a few chapters in, or if I'm listening to it, an hour in, I'll give a book a good chance, especially if it's got a good story. A decent enough story, I'll see where it goes.
But you have to hand it to that author or that publishing company and the graphic designer, whoever, comes up with that captivating art cover work enough to get you to at least read the book.
Yeah, I guess they're doing their job.
They're doing their job, right?
They're pulling me in.
Yeah, exactly. So you are born and raised in, is it the Herscher area, or you live there now?
Born and raised Kankakee County. I've lived all but my college years in Kankakee County. I'm from Herscher, just a few miles outside, kind of country boy. But went to DeVry up north in Lombard many, many years ago, and just those years is where I spent. Just not inside Kankakee County.
I cannot tell you the number of times I saw a commercial for DeVry watching cable TV as a kid. It came on all the time. Is DeVry even a thing anymore?
It still is. It's not. You don't see it a lot anymore.
No.
I remember back, my mom was actually the one that said, hey, you should check out DeVry, because I was heavy into programming computers and stuff. And she's like, DeVry had just kind of gotten started, and that was at a time they sent recruiters to your house. So some dude from up north came down and just chatted with us and see if we were a good fit for them and if they're a good fit for us. And it was like college recruiting. And yeah, I wanted to do IT, program computers, and I did DeVry.
And when was that? Was that in the 90s or was that like the late 80s?
Yeah, it was like right after I graduated, so 91.
And that's when, I mean, computers were so different back then than they are now.
A lot of my experiences is old school computers, like fixing them and stuff. Like I fix computers the old school way. A lot of my certifications are from the 90s. Like I just did other stuff and I never renewed them. So if you need somebody to fix a computer from the 90s, I'm your guy.
Okay. Is there a market for that? Like, do people, is that becoming a kind of like how it goes with antiques? Are people collecting old computers and playing games on them or doing something artistic with them?
I haven't seen it recently, but if in the future people become nostalgic for those 90 computers, I'm here.
Right. I mean, especially, I don't know how well the like PCs have lasted as far as like the hardware goes, but I know Apple computers from that era, they were built like tanks.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So I feel like they're going to last forever. I don't know if it was much like that for PCs at all.
Some graphic designers, like some of the book cover artists, they still use the old CRTs. And I know, you remember the old Macs that were different colors, like blue and red, with the big CRT monitor?
Yes.
Like, graphic designers love those things because they're better with color.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. I would never. Yeah, my grandpa's print shop always used Apple computers. Ever since they bought a computer, it has been an Apple, and they had those color ones. I think they were blue. I think they bought the blue ones. Yeah, and those big giant screens and everything. Oh my gosh. So born and raised in the area. At this point, you've written so many different things. If you look at your catalog of works, it spans from everything to short stories in magazines to screenplays to podcasts and everything in between. What drew you into writing, and what drew you into just, I guess, the storytelling landscape? Because like I said, it goes from, a lot of it is horror, but you have dove into other things as well. So where does that start for you?
I guess I just love a good story. And I think no matter how it's presented, if it's a good story, if it draws me in, characters, plot, any twist, I want to do it. I want to try it. If I have an idea, like, is it really going to fit into a novel, a podcast, or screenplay? I don't know until I try it. But if it doesn't matter the medium, as long as it's a good story. As far as like how it got started, it was actually Stephen King, because that's a lot of my early stuff is horror, and that's why, because that's what I read a lot of, Stephen King and a lot of horror stuff. I was reading, my first book of his was his Night Shift short story collection. And I was 12 or 13, which might be too young. My mom didn't really know I was reading it that young. But I remember Paperback Reader years ago. I went there and I was just browsing their little mini horror section. And I'm like, Stephen King, kind of heard of the guy. So I picked it up and loved it. And then my next book was Cujo from there. And
was Cujo another Stephen King?
Yeah, it's another Stephen King. It's about the rabid dog.
Okay. I should know all of these because my wife has all of his books. I'm almost positive. And she's a librarian, so she, of course, has a library of her own at her house, and she has all of them. In fact, some of your books are actually, I think, laying on top of some of the Stephen King books right now.
That's cool. I'll take it.
Yeah, but anyway, sorry to interrupt.
So Cujo, I didn't really like it all that much. I don't know why. Rabid dog. Not a big deal. I picked up a couple other of his books, liked them, and I'm like, well, why didn't I like Cujo? So I reread it, and I'm like, I just can't get into Cujo. And I thought, you know what, maybe I can do better than Cujo. It's Stephen King, Cujo's 7th, 8th book. I can't remember that. So I sat down and wrote, I think it was like 10,000 words of just pure crap. Like it was about a dog that goes rabbit. So I tried to emulate it, but after I wrote it, it was called Lucy.
Was that the name of the dog?
Yeah, it was the name of the dog.
Name of your dog, right?
No, it was in the book. Yeah.
Oh, in the book it was Lucy?
In the story, it was
okay.
Lucy. Lucie. I'll remember that. But I reread it. It was not good at all. And I'm like, but I fell in love with the process of creating, a couple characters and a story from start to finish. How's this going to end? What's going to happen in the middle? So I fell in love with doing that. And then from there, it just, I guess, escalated into the 25 plus years of creating stories.
Now, I'm curious to know what the difference is between your version and Stephen King's version, though. And I've not read that book. So, you'll probably have to put some spoiler alerts in there for me, So what didn't you like about his version?
What I liked about it was it was consistent with his character creation and his development. But it was just the story was not up to par with his previous stuff, and then the stuff I even read after. A lot of the scenes just kind of hung in the air where they just lingered on. It's not a long book compared to a lot of his works, and I'm like, I felt not the expert. I still felt he was wasting pages with one scene that was going on for maybe 10, 20 pages.
Oh my gosh!
So. I mean, that's just a non-expert opinion of just a reader.
You like to get it straight to the point.
Yeah. So I kind of like Ernest Hemingway inspires me. He gets to the point. But yeah, Lucy was just terrible. I did rewrite it because I had lost that short story somewhere, and I did rewrite it, and it did turn out better from my previous version, but not better than Cujo even.
Yeah. So pretty much what you did then is you took out those lengthy scenes or chapters, and you just kind of you got straight to the point.
Yeah. I just made it almost pure action. It probably might have worked as a short film. That might have been better because I had been watching a lot of films, and so maybe that was in my head. Just seeing the things.
You did this at age 14 around?
15-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Did you do creative writing in high school too?
Not high school. Just English. We had some creative writing sections,
sure,
but nothing major. The first creative writing thing I took was at KCC, actually, just to take it.
So, rewriting your, Stephen King version, then what that kind of, it was, as I always say, it's that the bug bit you at that point.
Yeah.
So then what did you start doing then?
Just short stories and just horror short stories, just real short ones, just to get the feel for how a story flows, nothing major at that point.
Do you remember the first original one that you wrote?
It not real long. It was called The Exhausted Man. It was just about a guy who encounters a family member who has been jogging every day for the past, I think it was year. And it turns out that there's a monster that has been chasing him and previous family members throughout decades. So when whoever's running dies, the next person up has to run. So that first one he encounters is warning him that he's about to die. Now he has to run, but he doesn't believe it. But he hears the monster and sees it.
Wow.
That was a short story.
That's deep.
I did turn it into a novel, but I had lost because when I was writing it, it was not computers, and I was just using a typewriter. So I've lost about 25% of it.
How did you lose it?
This is probably the author lore coming right here. Years ago, I had a briefcase. When I went to DeVry, I was doing some stuff at DeVry, and I had put all the physical stuff that I have written in that briefcase. There was a Star Trek parody screenplay in there. There was that short story. There was a bunch of short stories. I think there were probably 30, 40 short stories in there. Not real long ones, so it wasn't a huge stack of papers. But The Exhausted Man was in there, and I had turned it into a short novel. And the briefcase went missing, it turned up with some of the short stories missing and part of that novel missing. So, I mean, I'm sure I could recreate it.
So did you just accidentally leave your briefcase at DeVry one day, and then it
no
just
idea.
you don't remember?
I don't remember.
But it turned up eventually, and it was missing.
Yeah.
Someone stole Gregory's stories.
So yeah, there's stories out there.
So we're just constantly looking for the Exhausted Man novel to pop and be like, that's mine.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have 3/4 of it at home.
Yeah.
And it's not like the quarter of it that's missing is the first part or the middle. It's different pages. So.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know. I like the concept of that one, though, because that can almost reference into like so many other things in life, right? You know, talking about, oh, you're the next one up that has to run.
Yeah.
You know, that could reference so many other, kind of reflect so many other things in life. Like, it's kind of like when you become the father, of the family, or you become the patriarch, or
even in sports, somebody goes down with an injury, you're the next man up.
Yeah. It sounds like you didn't do creative writing too much more until college, right?
Yeah. DeVry, I was still, high school. The English teacher was inspiring. It was Mr. Briggs at Hersher. And I had done some stuff with creative writing, like sections. It wasn't like a whole class of just creative writing. We had just done like some short stories, some poems and stuff. And he really enjoyed what I wrote, and he inspired me. He encouraged me to continue on if I decided to do something like that. It was just little things here and there. Then DeVry, I really kind of started doing more and more.
When did it become, hey, let's make this into a movie? When did the movie interest and screenwriting come into play? Because you did that before you actually wrote a novel and published a novel, right?
Yeah, right. About 10 years. I did screenplays for about 10 years. It was a local guy who had an idea for a screenplay based kind of like a true life type thing. It was like a drama, and he knew I had written other stuff through Mr. Briggs and through a couple other people. He had found an interest in what I wrote. So he had this basic idea, and I just wrote an outline for him. And I've always been a big movie buff. So, I thought, I'll learn how to write a screenplay. I'll get a book.
Was it like Screenwriting for Dummies? Like, remember those dummy books?
The guy who produced and wrote Babylon 5, J. Michael Straczynski, he had a thick book of screenwriting, and it was just different screenwriting mediums that like plays and movie scripts and stuff like that. So just learning the basics of a format, I learned from that book. And then with the idea, I outlined an idea based on that, based on the guy's, like he just had like maybe a half a page of things. So I expanded it out. He liked it. He actually paid me to write it.
Wow.
So I wrote it. He had it optioned, I believe. This was like early 90s. I don't ever know what happened to it. I mean, I got my money.
But he didn't make the film.
I actually honestly don't know what his goal was, if it was to submit it somewhere to try to get it made, or if he wanted to make it himself. He wanted it low budget. So my first thought was he wanted to do it himself with like whatever equipment he could get.
What was the screenplay? What was the movie?
It was about his daughter, and it was a sensitive topic for him and his daughter. She got pregnant, and it was just the family deciding on what to do about, how to proceed from there, how to deal with it, stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
Sometimes I'll see a movie with a plot that is something like it. I'm like, is that it?
Did he sell it? After, completing your first screenplay, what were some of those things, though, that you did learn on how do you go about writing a screenplay?
I read a few books after that first screenwriting book. To get the format down, it was reading, how to plot it, because it's different than writing novels that I learned later. You have to be more concise in screenplays. Your dialogue has to be sharper, and you have to make sure that you're not the first advice that I kind of took was that you can't really do the directing in the screenplay. You have to let the director do it, obviously, because he is the director, but you have to let the actors kind of interpret like the dialogue and the direction that you did put in there.
The words don't always translate well into real life, right? I mean, that's probably the reasoning for that, I would think.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So you're writing these screenplays. What was the next one you did?
It was just a bunch of short films to practice writing a screenplay. A couple people and I would make them. Brian Prairie and I made some films.
Now you got me interested, because now I got to hear these.
Yeah,
so.
you should ask him. Some of them are online.
He was just on the podcast, and we didn't. I don't think we even talked about. There were obviously there's so many things to talk about Brian Prairie, but yeah, that's one thing we didn't talk about. So now I got to hear that from you.
Yeah.
So what were these movies you made with Brian?
The ones I can remember that are online. There were a lot of them were comedy sketches. One of them was Chocolate Brownie, where I wanted him, because Brian would star in them too.
Okay.
I wanted him to feed me the brownie, and it just shocks him to his core. But I don't want to spoil the ending. If anybody out there ever watches this short film.
Is it on YouTube?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. You'd have to ask Brian where he uploaded it. I think it's called Chocolate Brownie Love or Brownie Love or something. I mean, you could search for it. It's on there somewhere.
So he's feeding you this brownie. Are you not using your hands, or what's the...
No, I just want him to feed it directly into my mouth. Like, take it off the plate, put it in my mouth.
That just sounds so weird.
And I don't know if he's going to like me saying this. It was actually inspired by true events at a mall. I forget which mall. But I believe we were eating chocolate-covered strawberries, and I don't know if he had one or I had one, but I think I looked at him and said, why don't you just put it right there? Just right there. So,
oh man, I'm digging up Chocolate Brownie, man. You got to watch that. Then what were some of the other ones you did with Brian then?
Some of them were impromptu ones where it was just like a basic script. We did Suburban Kung Fu, where we were just stupid, silly kung fu guys, just messing around in a backyard somewhere. We did, you'd have to ask him on some of these. I think there's a couple more online.
And that kind of gets into, again, you've written for so many different types of mediums and things like that. And how is it that you decide, when you get a creative idea, how do you decide, okay, this is going to be a short film comedy sketch, or this is going to be a novel, this is going to be a podcast? How do you decide all those things?
It just depends on the scope that's in my head when I think of the idea. And like a lot of times I'll just outline something basic about it, an overall arc of the story, or just the beginning and what the ending might be. And it just depends on what I feel, how much it will take to tell that story. To be honest with the podcast, I started writing podcasts 3 years ago. I just probably most of the ideas I had, I'm like, how can I turn it into a podcast? Can I turn it into a podcast? What kind of audio engineering is it going to take? Sound effects and stuff like that. I had just started listening to a bunch of fiction podcasts. I'm like, I would like to try that. What kind of ideas are out there? And at the time when I started listening to fiction podcasts, they were real basic fiction stories, like not a lot going on. They've really advanced in the past couple of years. And the company Q Code is an amazing fiction podcast. They do amazing fiction stories. And once I started to hear some of them, I'm like, oh, I think just about any story I think of can be turned into a podcast. It's just how you translate it.
Yeah.
But as far as like novels and stuff, it like a lot of sci-fi ideas I have are probably just novels because of the scope. Horror stuff, it can, I can, when I think of horror ideas, I first think short story, and then like, okay, probably a short novel if I want to expand it out, stuff like that. It's just how I feel the scope is when I'm thinking about it.
So what led to writing your first novel then?
It was Nightcry. I love small town horror. Stephen King does a lot of small town horror. Peter Straub does a lot of small town horror, and that's kind of like what I like to read. Just like a small town, big horror, I guess. That's could be a tagline for something. I gotta
really
remember that one.
Yeah. Well, you'll remember it now. It's in this podcast.
So yeah, I from Herscher, which is like the perfect small town almost. And I thought, I want to base something in Herscher, and have a lot of the stuff inspired by Herscher. And that's, I probably might have ripped off like 20 different ideas from 20 different authors, just a bunch of murders happening in Herscher. And this guy comes back to his small town, he can't go home again. And everybody thinks it's him. Like, he's back. Here's these murders. It's you. So he's trying to prove his innocence. And I thought, well, it's horror, so I got to put something horror in it. So it's supernatural.
Of course.
And started writing that with the idea, and it just kind of went from there.
What are some specific things about Herscher, though, that you injected into Nightcry or any of your other novels for that matter? Because I know in The Golden Door, for example, and I should have pulled out the direct parts of that book, but there were definitely some of the sections when I was reading it, I was like, is he talking about this place? Oh, I know what it was. In The Golden Door, you talk about the kids going to a swimming hole that was a quarry.
The Bird Park one, before it was like fancier, now.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll move locations from somewhere else, put them in my book to where it takes place. The Golden Door, a lot of it is just a section of Herscher. I mean, I don't name Herscher as a town in that book, but it's on. If anyone's familiar with Herscher, there's the railroad tracks. It's on the northeast side. It's the west side of Herscher. That's where most of it takes place. Because there is a house. The house that they live in is about a block down from the house where I used to live in Herscher.
Okay.
So yeah, those locations are real. I just moved the quarry next to it.
You're right. Yeah, you moved the quarry closer to it. And then I was curious about that old factory or warehouse that was closed down, if that was a particular place in Herscher or...
No, I just put that in there.
Yeah, okay.
I would say that the town in the Golden Door is probably maybe 2-3 times the size of Herscher.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
So it's not like specifically Herscher, just
right?
A little
inspired, yeah. I guess getting back to the initial question, I totally got onto the Golden Door. No, it's not your fault. But since we were talking about Nightcry, though, what specifically is Herscher inspiration into Nightcry?
Most of Herscher, actually. I did change the name of Herscher to a different town name, but if anyone's familiar with Herscher, Legion Park, the Main Street, because the guy works at a newspaper, which would be, I didn't name it Herscher Pilot, but it's Herscher Pilot. A lot of these places, the streets are the same names. Some of the businesses I didn't want to, it was my first novel. I'm like, I don't want to get in trouble for like naming things because, what if I murder someone in this building in the book and the guy who runs, Herscher Pie is like, hey, you can't murder someone in my building. It doesn't look good. So, but like, yeah, the streets are the same. Like if anyone's familiar with Herscher, like there's that big curve, by the new park on Park Road. That new park wasn't there when I wrote the book, so it's just empty fields in the book. But there's that side of Herscher is descriptively worded in that book because there are some things that happen along one of the side roads down there.
Okay.
Trying to think. Yeah, the park, the baseball field. Because a lot of the stuff that's there now wasn't there. Like, didn't have like 4, 5, 6, gas stations there. Didn't have docks, drugs there.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't that second bank. I can't remember if Casey's was there. Casey's has been in there.
It has been there for
time.
a long time, yeah. But I don't, yeah. Because that was what Nightcry was 2000.
I started writing it 2001 or 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I know there was one gas station there. I can't remember which one it was.
And Nightcry wasn't released though until
no, it took me for whatever reason.
2011, right? Or was it? Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote it over 6 or 7 years, and I know I had put it away for a little while. It's because I wasn't experienced, full novel. Plus, I was doing other things. I was still writing screenplays. I was still taking on other projects. And, sometimes when someone's willing to pay you to write something, I'm like, yeah, I'll do that.
Well, yeah, sure. You're like, okay, I'll just put this down and then, pick that back up whenever I get the opportunity to do so. Yeah. What is your favorite format to write in?
To be honest, I'm an audio visual guy. So screenplays and podcasts. I've really started to enjoy writing podcasts. They're just as hard as writing anything else. Movies everything is different. All the mediums are different. However you do it. I do feel like if you read a lot of my novels, they're very visually oriented. Like they could someone if there's a producer out there, any of these books can be turned into a movie. Because if you read it, I feel they should be translated easily onto, a screenplay page, and because The Golden Door was originally a screenplay, and I didn't really.
It kind of gave that,
right?
Reading it, it kind of I was able to picture, for the most part, I was able to picture everything that was happening in my head. When I was reading that. So, and I could totally picture it as, I could definitely picture it as a movie.
Yes. Yeah. And I thought, well, I don't know if I'm ever going to submit this anywhere. So I'm like, well, I'll see if I can turn it into a novel. Because then, you're thinking, can I translate this into a novel? Maybe I can do somebody else's work into a novel or a novel into a screenplay, it's just practice.
Yeah.
To do stuff. And
let's talk about since, we've mentioned The Golden Door so many times, we talked about what the description is for Nightcry. Let's talk about the synopsis for The Golden Door. So people because that's a pretty eerie book. At least I think anyway. But yeah, if you want to go ahead and give the description for that.
Yeah, it's a coming of age tale because I am a fan of those too. I guess I'm just a fan of all types of stories, but coming of age tale. There's 2 boys. They're 14 and 9, and they discover that their dad is painting a door golden in their house, and he tells them explicitly, "Do not open this door." But they're young boys. 14 and 9. What are they going to do? They're curious.
Yeah.
They're going to open that door. So when they do open that door, they find what's been behind that door for however long that whatever's been. I don't want to get. I can't say what it is.
But yeah. No, what's behind the door is quite terrifying.
Yeah.
We'll just put it that way.
But yeah, like it's coming of age tale. The older boy, falls in love. This is not a spoiler. Gets kissed by a girl. It's like it's a coming of age tale. He's got to deal with that. He's got to deal with his little brother. He's got to deal with his dad, who's not the best dad.
I think the next book I'm going to read of the three I bought is Grandmother, because I definitely feel like that's it's got a lot of a Halloween feel to it,
Yeah.
and that one, just reading the description for that kind of gave me chills. And that was inspired by visiting your grandmother as a young kid, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that one.
Yeah, that one's a lot more personal. That's probably my most personal work, because there's a lot of things in there that involve my grandmother that are true. And when I give you the description of the book, I'm not saying this part's true. So the synopsis of the book is this guy's grandmother. She can see people's futures, and they're both good and they're both bad. But the problem is only the bad ones happen. Never the good ones. Only the bad ones come true. And the grandmother, she's 94 years old, and she can't tolerate these bad ones happening all the time. But she's too old to stop them. So she enlists the help of her grandson, who's just this, he's kind of hapless. He has no direction in life. I mean, he has a job, but he loves his grandmother. So he's like, you know what? Yeah, I'll see what I can do. And in trying to figure out why the bad things are happening and to stop them, they find out why they're happening. And it is a creature that they can't believe is real. And this creature is the one making the bad things happen. My grandmother, she passed away in early 2000s, and she's very a devout religious person. So there are some religious themes in the book, and that all that part is true. And at the time when I was younger, the first thing she would say to me to get out of the car, she lived down Southern Illinois, is, "Do you believe Jesus Christ is our one Lord and Savior?" I'm like this young punk. I mean, I didn't care about that stuff. I just wanted to either go play in the farmland, just go hang out, read, whatever. I just, yes, sure, whatever. She'd give me a kiss and push us on our way because I had a brother.
Yeah, Grandma.
Yeah,
yep,
sure.
I do.
I'm there.
I believe.
whatever you
sure,
want.
Sure. Can I have my $10 now?
Yeah, $10 and a cookie. I'll take it.
And a stick of gum, maybe.
That's right. So, but the part that is the whole plot of the book is seeing people's futures. She actually believed that. And she had told me that one time, and my mom had told me that one time. But once again, I'm just this young jerk of a teenager, like whatever, But I started to believe it years later when I used to race bicycles, and I would train. And when I lived just outside of Herscher, I'd go training on the countryside, ride these long. I took my bike out, and my mom comes running out of the house. Grandma called, don't go riding your bike. I'm like, whatever, I got to ride. It's not like I got a big motorcycle. I got to ride. I got to ride my 2-wheel bicycle. I got to pedal it. And she's like, no, she called, don't do it. And I did anyway. And about a half a mile from the house, I hit a rock, like the most perfect hit on this rock. And I started wobbling, and I hit the wrong brake to stop. I hit the front brake. And if anybody rides bike knows, you hit the front brake and you're going pretty good, you're going to tip the bike up.
Yep.
I flipped over the handlebars and slid on gravel because it was near a bridge. And I hit the guardrail of the bridge with my body. And it was painful, but it wasn't like I couldn't get up and walk. So I limped. It was only half a mile from home. So I limped back home, and I just looked at my mom and I said, Grandma was right. And
your mom believed all these things too, then? She took these things seriously?
My mom believed it because she never told me all the stories, but she had told me a few stories about some things that had happened, and she had believed it all these years.
Yeah, that's creepy.
So
yeah,
put it in a book.
That must have been so hard to, I'm sure, kind of like going through your memories and trying to remember some of those things, or, maybe like if your mom was still around during this time, or she is still around, I don't know, but asking her some more in-depth questions about grandma, and what can you tell me about when you were a kid? And
my mom is still around, but she's got not trying to be morbid, she's got stage whatever, real bad dementia. And so I would love to hear more.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen. I'm like, I think I've got enough to like just wonder, is it true? Is it not true? There are things, I can just pull on those memories and just wonder.
So how long did it take you to do that, to write the grandmother book?
Listen, after Nightcry, the books didn't take as long, like 6-7 years.
So you kind of it gave you some confidence.
Yeah.
Because what was the response to Nightcry?
Yeah, some of the reviews were fine. It wasn't like, it is a first novel, I pumped it out there.
And you're doing this on your own, right?
Yeah.
Self-publishing.
Yeah, that first one I did self-published just to see what it was. I had a friend who, a young adult fantasy writer who I went to school with, and she had been doing self-publishing and she loved it. And she, like all the control, she can do all this on her own. She can, she did source out her book covers.
Sure.
Because like me, she
just
wasn't an artist. Yeah, I'm not an artist. But I'm like, you know what? I'll try it because it seems like, I want people to read the story, and it's a quicker way to get that out there. And there are avenues to, just like if you're traditionally published, to just get your book out there, have like reviewers read it and stuff like that.
I guess while we're talking about that, what are some tips and things you can throw out there to someone who's going through the process of doing their first book? Or
the two best pieces of advice I got early on, or read, or I don't remember where I got them actually, is one, just get the first draft down. Just don't worry about anything but getting that first draft. And in correlation to that is don't edit as you go. I had tended to edit as I go, like, I reread that paragraph. I don't like it. I'm going to go back and rewrite it. So wasting 5-10 minutes rewriting a paragraph, I could have spent that 5-10 minutes advancing the story or just brainstorming stuff down. And it doesn't matter if your first draft is terrible or not. If you have sense, you're going to cut, you're going to add, it's going to happen. So just get the first draft down, take a break for a day or two, then go back to it.
That would be like if we stopped recording.
Yeah, like go back.
Like every 5 to 10 minutes, I'm be like, oh wait, no, Greg, let's backtrack to that, and okay, let's start again. I messed up. I didn't like the way I said that. If I did that every 5 to 10 minutes, it would probably make both of our brains explode.
It would. One episode would take days to record.
Right. If I'd be like, okay, hold on, Matt, we got to stop. I got to go edit this part real quick, and then we'll come back to this part. Can you kind of provide some insight on anything else you've got planned in the near future?
I'm working on another horror story based in Illinois. As most of my stuff is based in Illinois. It was one I started in 2009. I just kind of pulled it up on my computer, and I really liked how it was going. So I pulled out all my notes and stuff on that. I'm editing a apocalyptic story. It's done. I'm just editing it. It also takes place in Illinois.
So you edit your own books. You don't have someone else looking at them for you?
I do the first round of edits, mainly for story content. But then I will pay someone to edit it, because I'll probably miss 99% of other errors. But story-wise, I usually just have someone read grammar, stuff like that, consistency, stuff like that. As far as story, I'm pretty guarded on the story. Like I don't like a lot of story suggestions. I will take them and see if it involves consistency. Yeah, of course I'm gonna look at those. But yeah, I will just edit the first round, and then everybody else does the other stuff.
Yeah. And are you still self-publishing these days, or have you teamed up with a publisher at this point? Or
it depends on the project. A lot of the shorter works, I just went out there. Like I'll do novellas once in a while, like my 2 science fiction ones I put out there, because it just depends on the market. Because like science fiction novellas that market's not huge. You can find markets in like some of the longer magazines like Asimov's and Fantasy and Science Fiction. They do novellas and stuff, but as far as like publishers, it's hard to find someone. And the novels I will always submit for a while first on that. The horror novel I'm working on, I'll probably put that out there, just because I like the story. I just want it out there. Sometimes if I just want it out there, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah. What are the pros and cons of self-publishing versus, publishing with someone, a company, what have you?
These days, I would say the biggest pro is with self-publishing, you have control over everything. You can decide if like with book cover, like Grandmother, it was originally published through a publisher, and I had no control over the cover, and the cover that they had was not even remotely consistent with the book. It didn't even make sense. And I had called them out and said, "Did you even read the book?" And they never got back to me. They published it. You could still find a copy of that at Barnes and Noble. I think there's like 2 or 3 left. They can't return them for some reason. But the other cover is also there.
Okay, that's funny.
Yeah. I told them, please take this old one.
Please, can we just? Yeah.
But I think that's the biggest pro is that the control. The biggest con is the stigma with self-publishing. A lot of people don't have a good opinion. Like they're with editing and stuff like that. You could put an amazing cover on a terrible book, and people won't know it till they read the book.
Yeah, right.
So I mean, that's the biggest con, and that's kind of really it, because these days, like, publishers aren't doing what they used to do with authors, like sending them out on tours and setting up book signings and stuff. They don't do that anymore. That's up to the author, which if you're going to do that, sometimes you might as well just self-publish, because you're going to do that anyway.
Where can people find your books if they really want to get into if they're listening to this episode, especially during the Halloween season, where can they get a hold of them?
You can get them pretty much anywhere online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. The local Barnes & Noble here in Bourbonnais, they have some of my books on the shelf. I believe the Orland one has some.
Does Rubber Rose have any of your books?
No, they don't. I forget about them.
Yeah.
Because I know they're newer.
Yeah.
And I know she sets up stuff for local authors. I just haven't.
Yeah. Call, email Nikki, or send her a Facebook message. Tell her you know me.
I will do that. I will drop names like nobody's business.
Yeah. And did you say nightcrynovel.com, right?
Nightcrynovel.com. There's all the links are on there. You can get to the books, the podcasts, anything that I've published online only. And sometimes I'll put free stories on there, something that I've just written, and you can just read.
Yeah. Oh, and that's something we didn't even really, we talked about a couple of the podcasts that you've written, but we didn't even say what the titles were. If people want to look for those fiction podcasts, what are they?
There's a few. There's one, my first one was Middle Road. It's just a 5-episode, a 5-episode horror. It's just about a guy who the world outside is just slowly becoming nothing. And everybody who's out there is either dead or trying to get him to come out there to die. The second one, we're actually finishing up recording next week, Weather Beaten. It's a sci-fi thriller just about a meteorologist who mysteriously dies, but has discovered some man-made apocalyptic event that is going to occur soon. And it's up to his wife to try to figure out everything. And then we are starting season 2. I don't know if you've listened to Lakeshore Lover yet.
I was actually listening to the first episode today, actually, because that's the most recent one, right?
So yeah, we're going to
because
start
the what did you say? Weather worn.
Weather Beaten.
Weather Beaten. That's not out yet.
That's not out yet.
Yeah, but no, I was listening to a little bit of Lakeshore Lover. Yeah,
yeah, you're gonna want to catch up because we're gonna start popping out episodes of that.
Yeah,
because it's kind of it wasn't planned to be continuous. It was just going to be season 1, but I had left it open for no reason because it's a mockumentary. It's a comedy.
right.
It just makes fun of a life that I had before, and it goes right into season 2, and then. Season 2, we're going to start recording. It's written. We're just going to start recording it. And it's going to be ridiculous, just like the first season. I don't know what to say about it. It's just so stupid and ridiculous that it kind of makes me laugh, even though I've lived that life.
Yeah.
And
it's about a rapper, right?
Yeah. So back in the day, in the 90s, late 80s, I was a rapper.
You were legitimately a rapper.
I was called Lakeshore Lover. I had a couple albums and some songs. You can ask Brian Prairie about it. There's a music video of my flagship song out there. But over the years, I love rap. I love old school rap, stuff like that. Hip hop. It's what I grew up on. 80s, 90s kids. I think a lot of us grew up on hip hop, and for some reason, I decided Lakeshore Lover and put out a couple albums. When 2000s kind of slowed down a little bit, just doing other stuff, marriage, kids. And just I would do a song every once in a while. And for some reason, a couple of years ago, I don't know why, I got one of my friends. She's like, "You always unretire and retire as Lakeshore Lover." I go, "Yeah, it's hilarious, right? I just put out one song a year and I just go back into hiding." And I don't know where the idea came from. And it was when I was listening to podcasts heavy. And it's just right after I got done doing Middle Road. I'm like, you know what? What about a mockumentary about Lakeshore Lover? So the basis is 95% of it is fake, 5% is true. And I'm not telling you what's fake and what's true. You got to figure it out on your own because some of the stuff that's in there is so ridiculous. It could be fake or true.
It could have actually happened.
There's a couple of things in there that sound so ridiculous, but I'm just telling you they are true.
I mean, the name Lakeshore Lover is already ridiculous.
It is.
I'm sorry.
It is. I get it. The first album was called Lake Effect. So it was like a nautical themed rap album. I never took it seriously. I mean, I did parody songs, but a lot of my stuff had a lot of innuendo. It was just making fun of rap a little bit. But, the mockumentary, there's going to be new songs in season 2. Season 1, I can't spoil season 1 because the theme of season 2 is based off the end of season 1. And my good friend, Kimberly Snap, you met her. Yeah.
Yes.
You know her?
I just know her because we have mutual friends, and we met at the Strawberry Jazz Festival. That was the first time we met. We've been like Instagram followers, I think, for like a couple years. So she's in it. Yeah,
she plays Megan Moore, who's the journalist on the hunt for Lakeshore Lover, and just kind of going through his life. Season 2 is just based on she discovers new things about Lakeshore Lover and his past life, even before he became a rapper, and some stuff after. So, and she never gets a date on Saturday night. That is a reoccurring thing. There's a lot of reoccurring jokes in the first season that I'm carrying over because I didn't think there was going to be a season 2, but
right. That's fun though.
Yeah, it's been fun to write and just make up stuff.
Yeah.
And put little truth nuggets in there. Like, this happened, but you don't know.
Well, and I really thought we would just be talking about horror mainly today, but man, you are a man of many genres and mediums and all that. So it's cool to learn about Gregory Thompson.
Well, thank you. I like to tell a good story, and sometimes I like to make people laugh, or try to.
Well, thanks for being on, and I hope someone buys your books, listens to the podcasts and all of that stuff. But yeah, please give Greg some support.
Thank you. Appreciate it. If one person enjoys one book, I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, I highly suggest it just from, the Golden Door that I've read so far. I enjoyed it. So if you're into looking for some more horror to read, I suggest starting there.
Thank you.